of conservative mutual fund products. And there's 7 chapters left after this. So let's dive right into it. I'm going to just read for the next hour, and then I'm going to do another second study session later. Hang on. So I'll say stay long as you want, but I'm doing until 8:30 here for reading. And this, I was up early this morning, about just before 7 a.m. Pacific, and I was doing some portfolio rebalancing for my own portfolio, my tax-free savings account. So that was pretty fun. And with the help of the AI, I was able to make some pretty cool changes. So instead of investing in just individual stocks, because I was too heavily concentrated on investing in financials or in 75% in Canada, I've diversified quite a bit. 40% US, 15% emerging markets, or 10%, and then 15% like Europe, Asia, Australia, with again these different index funds. So I'm super excited to see how that'll turn out. And so just trying to do a portfolio rebalance once a year. So let's dive right in. Chapter 11, here we go. Conservative mutual fund products. At this point in your studies, you will begin to learn about the products mutual fund sales representatives are licensed to sell. This is the know your product side of providing excellent client service. When assisting clients with their investment decisions, product knowledge is every bit as important as knowing the client. I'm just going to zoom into this. Yo, what's going on? CH3 Star, welcome. Good morning. It's 8 a.m. Pacific. We're going to study for just 30 minutes, and then I'm going to do another session later, longer session. Yeah. Lack of a thorough understanding of both the client and product areas, risks, and improper fit between clients and mutual funds. The next 2 chapters examine the various types of mutual funds available in the marketplace. This examination begins with conservative mutual fund products, consisting of money market mutual funds, mortgage mutual funds, bond funds, and other fixed income mutual funds. These are products sitting at the lower end of the risk hierarchy. The following sections examine the investment objectives of the specific class of fund and compare the performance of the fund class to other fund classes and benchmarks. For example, how does the return on money market funds compare to the fund next highest in risk? As well, how do money market funds compare to the returns on T-bills? The chapter then goes on to explain what to look for in the mutual fund tables. Finally, the chapter presents a sample mutual fund, citing its investment objectives and examining the composition of its portfolios contained in its annual report. What are money market mutual funds? According to the Canadian Investment Funds Standards Committee, CIFSC, money market funds must invest at least 95% of their total net assets in money market securities. Money market securities are short-term, highly liquid fixed income investments of varying maturities of 364 days or less that are readily convertible to cash. Their returns reflect changes in short-term interest rates. Yeah, absolutely. No worries. Moving up as interest rates rise and down as they fall. There are, however, 2 important differences that distinguish money market fund investments from their traditional banking counterparts. Oh yeah, dentist appointment, super important. Yeah. Money market instrument investments are not insured by the Canada Deposit Insurance Corporation. Oh, interesting. Or any other insurer. Money market funds may fluctuate in value with changes in short-term interest rates. Sounds good. See you later. I'll be having a lunchtime live later for lunch. The risk of default on these portfolios is very low, since they are backed by the governments issuing them. This does not mean that their value cannot change, however. Recall that the value of any fixed income security, like a bond, will fluctuate as market interest rates change. The change in value will be inversely related to the direction of the interest rates and directly related to in larger magnitudes as maturities increase in length. The value of money market securities should still fluctuate with changing interest rates, but the fluctuation should be relatively small because their maturity is very short. Money market funds, investment objectives. The investment objective of a money market fund is to earn stable returns by investing in short-term money market securities. These securities include Government of Canada T-bills, T-bills of other provinces, very short-term government securities other than T-bills, and high-quality corporate securities such as commercial paper. As required by National Instrument 81-102, the term to maturity of these securities is less than a year, and the average term to maturity of a money market fund must be 90 days or less. The value of short-term debt securities is not very sensitive to changes in interest rates. A risk associated with long-term investing in money market funds is that these funds sometimes have a return that does not keep pace with inflation. So very low interest on money market funds, thus eroding the purchasing power of the investment. However, money market securities and money market funds are expected to have a low amount of volatility risk. In addition, money market securities generally have a low amount of default risk. Yo, yeah. Hard Moody Animations, welcome alive. Thanks for tuning in. There's your shout out. Appreciate being here. Certainly, the securities issued or guaranteed by the government have virtually no default risk. Corporate money market securities have some default risk, but mutual funds will invest only in those that have high credit ratings. Safety of principal and liquidity are of prime importance for money market funds. Given the low risk characteristics and the built in liquidity of money market securities, this objective is relatively easy to achieve. The objectives of safety of principal and high liquidity are similar to the investment objectives of traditional banking and trust company products. Oh, I'm talking about my mutual fund course. It's talking about conservative mutual fund investments, Chapter 11, such as term deposits and guaranteed investment certificates. There is, however, an important difference between money market funds and traditional deposits. Money market funds are not covered by deposit insurance. Clients must be informed of this fact prior to the purchase of any mutual fund. And this is especially important because of the similarity between money market funds and deposits. If you're new here and you like studies with me sessions, hit that subscribe button. Go live daily for lunch with me, study with me, workouts. Yesterday I did meal prep. I posted those lives. I still need to post the recipes that I did. I did egg bites and power balls. So I will be posting that later into the description of that live. Yeah. Okay. The returns on money market funds. Given the low risk profile and objectives of capital preservation and liquidity of money market funds, you should expect that their return performance would show considerable stability. This performance profile is confirmed in the graph in figure 11.1. The graph compares the annual returns of a money market fund to the annual returns of mortgage funds during a hypothetical period of 15 years. Yeah. Oof. Yeah, barely makes 5%. Notice that the return pattern on mortgage funds is both higher and more volatile than money market funds. Using the same data that we're used to construct figure 11.1, this means that the compound average annual return over the example of a 15-year period in mortgage funds, 4.42%, is higher than the average compound average for annual return in the same period for money market funds, 3.21. The trade-off of creating the higher return on the average mortgage fund, therefore, is more volatility from year to year. If you compare what you earn on average money on the average money market fund to what you earn on the average T-bill, you will find that the average money market fund return is lower. Perhaps the simple reason for the difference is that the management fees charged on money market funds. Although management fees are lower for this type of mutual fund, they still reduce the net return earned by your clients. If you assume an annual management fee of 1%, then the total return earned by the average money market fund was equivalent to that earned on T-bills over the 15-year period. All returns earned on money market funds are considered interest earnings and are taxed as interest income. Since money market funds invest only in money market securities that pay income, no other type of income can be earned. In general, money market funds distribute their earned interest income on a monthly basis. Reading the performance tables. Oh, still talking about mutual funds. It's a type of investment that invests in right? You're an investor, I'm an investor. We're all pooling our money together to invest in a fund or a portfolio, which is a mutual fund, which is it includes stocks, bonds, etc. in it. So rather than you buying one share of stock in a company, good morning, Dat Boy Kozer, welcome alive. Rather than you buy one share of stock in a company, you get to buy one unit of a mutual fund and then invest a percentage of that $50 in towards that stock that's in the portfolio. So you're getting like 10 stocks or something like that in one mutual fund. And then some are invested in banks or financial, like finance or banks, insurance, oil and gas. You can get all sorts of different types of mutual funds that are diverse, really diversified. Diversified just means a mix of a lot of different companies. Okay, reading performance tables. Money market funds. Until the advent of the internet, mutual fund data in the financial press was constrained by the newspaper columns in which they were printed. As the internet grew and mutual fund data became more widely disseminated, the amount and detail of data also expanded. Mutual fund data are now readily available in great depths on the websites of newspapers, globalmail.com, web search and link sites, fundlibrary.com, and third-party providers such as morningstar.ca. Hey, Isabella, welcome live. Thanks for tuning in. And again, Dat Boy Kozer, if you're new here, hit subscribe. We go live daily for study with me, workout with me, meal prep, etc., etc. And I'm going to be doing another study session later after our lunchtime live. A mutual fund investor turning to any of these sources typically finds a basic array of information on funds of interest, which include performance data, usually from 1 month to inception, comparison to the returns of an appropriate index over the same time periods, sector or asset allocation breakdown, top 10 holdings and portfolio weights, a record of distributions, a profile of the fund manager, price history and charts, background information including management fees, sales fees, RSP eligibility, and minimum investment amounts. Performance data for money market funds are reported slightly differently compared to other types of mutual funds. While other funds report changes in net asset value per unit, most money market funds assume that the net asset value per unit is usually constant at $10. Instead report the yield currently being earned. When money market funds report performance, they use two yield calculations, current yield and the effective yield. The current yield for a money market fund is calculated as the most recent 7-day yield on the fund, adjusted to an annual rate. The 7-day yield is calculated as follows. 7-day yield is ending net asset value divided by initial net asset value minus 1. Consider a fund with 10 million of net assets that have earned the following amounts over the last 7 days. Yeah. 7-day yield is calculated by dividing the ending net asset value, by the fund's initial net asset value, and then subtracting 1. Excuse me. Right. So 7-day yield minus 1. Multiply by 365 divided by 7 to get the annual rate of return. The effective yield is computed using the 7-day yield and the following effective yield. The 7-day yield in this formula gives an effective yield of 5.62%. When your calculator would be in the X variable, the National Instrument 81-102 gives money market funds the choice of reporting current yield or current and effective yield. However, money market funds usually provide two yield calculations. Both yields are required to avoid confusion and interpretation. Previously, some funds reported on only their current yield, while others reported only their effective yield. Since the effective yield is always higher than the current yield for the same fund, funds reporting only current yield appeared to be generating lower returns, which was not necessarily the case. Confusion is eliminated by providing both yields. To interpret the yields, you must examine the assumptions made in each yield calculation. First, note that the current yield calculations look only at the return over the most recent 7-day period and ignores what your client might do with the money if it were paid out. This calculation assumes, therefore, that compounding of returns will not take place. The effective yield calculation, in contrast, makes the assumption that the yield generated, hey, what's going on, Matthew Vause? Over the last 7 days will remain constant for 1 year into the future, and that the returns earned weekly are reinvested in the fund. Thus, weekly compounding of returns at the current rate is assumed in the effective yield calculation. Oh, is my dog's name Eli? No, his name's Pino. Pinot. I'll show him to you guys in just a minute. Okay. Which of these two calculations is best depends on your point of view. If you're looking for a short-term return comparable to term deposits and GICs and do not expect to reinvest the income, then the current yield, which is not assuming compounding, is perhaps better. If, however, you're looking for a somewhat longer-term investment, then the effective yield is better. So current yield, no compounding. Effective yield with compounding, as it assumes the compounding of returns, which is more consistent with longer-term investments. Money market fund standard performance data are the effective and/or current yields computed using data not more than 45 days old. Sample money market fund. Wow. Yeah. This examination of a sample money market fund uses hypothetical information. Hey, welcome back, Harmoody. Hypothetical information to illustrate how this type of mutual fund might operate and the types of investments the fund might contain. As with most mutual funds, the sample prospectus is designed to avoid repetition by dealing simultaneously with all of the mutual funds distributed by the same distributor. For the money market fund, the investment objective could be to conserve capital while maintaining liquidity and achieving a regular income. For that purpose, the fund's assets are primarily invested in commercial paper issued and guaranteed by major Canadian corporations and all financial institutions. Oh, ISA. ISA? Appreciate your time. Appreciate you let me know that, ISA. Is that how it's pronounced? ISA? And all financial institutions, including Canadian chartered banks, trust companies, and savings and credit unions. The fund may also invest in treasury bills issued by the Government of Canada or a province of Canada, short-term debt securities of municipal and school corporations. Nice. Or in guaranteed funds of Canadian financial institutions. ISA or ISA? 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 The average weighted duration until maturity of the fund's portfolio does not exceed 180 days. The fund plans to maintain the value of its units at approximately $10. From Canada. Canada, eh? How are these investment objectives expressed in the portfolio that the fund manager has constructed? First, look at the breakdown of the portfolio investments at the end of December 2020 X1, presented in the pie chart form in figure 11.2. Oh, you're from UAE. Nice. That's awesome. That's so cool. Of the whole portfolio, approximately 22% is invested in federal and provincial T-bills. 12% is in bonds, maturing within 6 months, and 66% in notes, commercial paper, and cash. Okay. So bonds maturing in 6 months, federal T-bills. Yeah. Commercial paper. You have a turtle? Nice. Right on. Oh, it's getting sunny out there. Turning to the statement of investment portfolio, figure 11.3. Note that there are a total of 25 different securities in the portfolio. Of the 25, 3 are federal T-bills with varying remaining maturities, ranging from 3 months to about 6 months. There are 4 provincial T-bills and notes of banks and provinces. All right. Yep. Money market securities. Yeah. Yeah. The total portfolio value is stated at cost, but is expected to be a good approximation of market value given the stable nature of the securities. The value is about 67 million. Note that the largest single investment is 7.2 million in a province of Nova Scotia note maturing June 7th, 2002. I have not played Roblox, no. And I'm studying mutual funds. It's a financial course used to get your license provincially, depending on where you live in my country. And we have provinces. Some places have states. We have they're called provinces. Um, and the province that I'm in, I'm getting working on a course that gets me relicensed to sell mutual funds when I get back into banking. Oh, you're 8. Wow, crazy. Okay. The financial statements also include a market review not presented here in the market. In the market review, the fund manager explains what has happened to rates and therefore the performance of the fund over the recent past and why. We got 10 more minutes in this reading session. The fund manager also provides a forecast or outlook for the fund over the next few months. The outlook portion of the market review reflects the fund managers at the time of the statements. Those views are likely to change as time goes on, and the fund manager can turn out to be wrong. What are mortgage mutual funds? These funds generally invest in high quality residential mortgages, usually National Housing Act, NHA, insured. Small parts of their portfolio can be invested in cash and bonds and mortgage backed securities. Mortgage funds are in the fixed income category, along with bond funds and preferred dividend funds. All three of these types of funds earn income in the form of interest for mortgage and bonds and dividends for preferred dividend funds. Unlike money market funds, which also earn interest income, these fixed income funds can also generate capital gains. Mortgage mutual funds are considered to carry higher risk than money market funds, but less risk than bond funds. In addition to the fact that the mortgage fund returns have been more volatile than money market funds over the last 10 years, the assets that mortgage funds hold have higher default risk. This is because mortgage funds are backed by the creditworthiness of individuals rather than the creditworthiness of the government, as in the case of T-bills. Here we go. Introduction to mortgages. A mortgage is a loan secured against real property. It has two main characteristics: an amortization period, during which the entire principal amount of the mortgage will be paid off, and a term, during which a particular rate of interest on the mortgage stays in effect. Amortization periods range up to 25 years, sometimes longer. Terms can be as long as 10 years and as short as 6 months. Variable interest rate mortgages are also available. Mortgages are characterized as either open or closed. An open mortgage can be repaid at any time by the mortgager, the borrower, without paying an interest penalty. A closed mortgage can also be repaid prior to the end of the term, but a substantial interest penalty may apply. Because of this penalty, the borrower does not break the term until its end. When the mortgage term reopens for negotiation, open mortgages typically have a higher interest cost than the closed mortgages because of the repayment feature. Yeah, take care. Residential mortgages are conventional mortgages. Yeah, if they do not exceed 80% of the appraised value. Residential mortgages are conventional mortgages if they do not exceed 80% of the appraised value of the property. Mortgage lenders do not generally require insurance on conventional mortgages because they have good security in case of default. Non-conventional mortgages require insurance. Insurance raises the cost of the mortgage by as much as 300 basis points. A basis point is 1/100th of a percent. If you negotiate a mortgage at 5%, for example, and are required to pay 75 basis points more for insurance, the mortgage will cost 5.75. Under certain conditions, residential borrowers can have their mortgages insured under the National Housing Act. The Act provides government guarantees in case of default. Mortgage borrowers make blended monthly mortgage payments that include principal repayment and interest. The confusing aspect of mutual funds involves understanding why a mortgage fund's net asset value should move up or down with changing mortgage interest rates. Recall that fixed income securities move in the opposite direction to market interest rates. Consider that a mortgage rate, once negotiated between the borrower and the lender, is fixed until the end of the term, at which point the rate is renegotiated. Now imagine that you're the fund manager for a mortgage mutual fund and have just bought 100,000 mortgage at par from a financial institution. Buying the mortgage at par means that the mortgage interest rate and the current rate on mortgages are the same. Assuming that the rate is 5% and your mortgage fund computes net asset value per share on a daily basis. What would happen to the net asset value per share if the mortgage rate suddenly increased to 6%? Of course, only the interest rates on newly negotiated mortgages would increase. The rate on the 100,000 mortgage you bought previously is fixed at 5 until the end of its term. Is that mortgage still worth par value? The answer to the question, think about whether you would be able to sell that mortgage to someone at par. Clearly, if someone had bought 100,000 to invest today, he or she would be able to buy a mortgage offering an interest rate of 6%. The investor would not pay you 100,000 for a 5% rate. If you wish to sell the mortgage, then you would have to lower your price until the price paid. Given the 5% fixed payments to be made, results in a return to the buyer of 6%, the going rate on mortgages. In other words, the market value of your 100,000 par value mortgage must fall. Computing funds net asset value per unit means determining the value of the portfolio as you are going to sell it all today. In the case of a rise in mortgage rates, the fund at which you could sell the portfolio today will be lower, so the net asset value will decline. The opposite is true for falling mortgage rates. Falling mortgage rates will result in an increase in the value of the mortgage portfolio. When the investment objective of a mortgage mutual fund suggests the possibility of capital gains, it is referring to times when mortgage interest rates fall. Mortgages do not trade on exchanges or the over-the-counter market. To be fair to new purchasers of a mortgage fund's units, the fund's current market value must be determined prior to completing the purchase. And this can be done only by computing the fund's value as if all the mortgages were to be sold. Mortgage funds investment objectives. The investment objective of a mortgage fund is to earn current income through the investment in a diversified portfolio of mortgages while at the same time preserving capital. In some cases, the investment objective also includes a desire to earn capital gains, but the emphasis is always on the side of preserving capital. Mortgage funds are not identical in risk and do not have identical portfolios. The types of mortgages that a mortgage fund can hold vary greatly from mortgage fund to mortgage fund. As a result, the fund's risk levels can vary greatly. Some funds specify exactly what kind of mortgages they can invest in. For example, the investment strategy of a typical mortgage fund limits mortgages in the following way. First, mortgages on Canadian residential and commercial properties that are National Housing Act (NHA) insured. This is sometimes referred to as a mortgage guaranteed by the government. Debt instruments issued or guaranteed by the Government of Canada, any Canadian provincial government, or agencies of any of these governments. Debt instruments issued by Canadian municipalities and companies. Some mortgage funds restrict investment to first residential mortgages. Other funds invest in commercial and industrial mortgages. Commercial and industrial mortgages have different characteristics from residential mortgages. First, they tend to have high principal amounts, so each mortgage held in the fund is larger. Second, they tend to have longer terms. While residential mortgages have terms from 1 to 3 years on average, commercial and industrial mortgages have terms of 3 to 5 years. All mortgage characteristics are important in understanding the risk level of mortgage funds. Two kinds of risks in mortgage funds are default risk and volatility. Default risk is low for virtually all mortgage funds because the portfolios are highly diversified. For funds holding residential mortgages, many individual mortgages are required to form a large portfolio. A typical mortgage fund may hold 10,000 to 15,000 individual mortgages. Mortgage funds therefore have low default risk. Most default risk has been removed by holding many mortgages. In addition, most of the mortgages held by funds investing in residential mortgages are either National Housing Act insured or privately insured against default. Finally, in the case of many mortgage funds, any mortgage fund to be in default is bought by the fund's distributor or the distributor's parent company. The volatility of mortgage funds is directly related to the average term of its mortgage portfolio. As with bonds, the longer the average term to maturity, the higher the fund sensitivity to changes in mortgage interest rates. Interest rate sensitivity is expected to be lower for mortgage funds than for bond funds for two reasons. First, mortgage rates change much less frequently than the interest rates on bonds. The decision to change mortgage rates rests with the banks and the other mortgage lenders, while the interest rates or yields on bonds change when investors bid up or bid down the prices of bonds that trade in the market. This bidding takes place daily. Second, mortgages by nature have less interest rate risk than bonds. The reason, in part, is that interest on mortgages is paid monthly, while interest on bonds is paid semi-annually. Another reason is that the average mortgage has a shorter term than the average bond. From the perspective of both default risk and interest rate risk, mortgage funds are riskier than money market funds, but should be less risky than bonds. All right, we're on 11-12. We're going to leave it there. So we're on 11-12, and we're going to read more later, and we'll probably finish this chapter by the end of today. So my goal is like pretty much a chapter a day. So it's going to be a lot of reading, but it'll help me get this done because I got this section is 10, chapter 10, 11, 12, 13. So 4 chapters. So we're going to get all that done. We're really close, Mindset Fam. All right. I'll see you guys all for lunch with me later today. Probably guessing 12:45 p.m. Pacific or a little bit earlier. We'll see. Peace.